Section 5.4 gets back to factoring, but this time with polynomials, so things larger than x squared. Here are two examples we'll start with. These are actually old style questions. You just got to take out what you can and solve it. So let's say you have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 15x. The first thing you do is take out an x before you do anything else. So x times x squared plus 2x minus 15. And then the next thing you do is you've got to look, and now you have a quadratic formula that you can factor into two binomials like this. And you got to find what makes negative 15 but still gives positive 2. So you're going to have x plus 5 and x minus 3. And this is your factor for the first one. Second one's pretty similar. You're going to factor out everything you can and then finish it. So before you do anything else, you can factor out a 2y cubed. You're left with y squared minus 9. Then you're not done yet because y squared minus 9 is the difference of squares. So you have 2y cubed times y plus 3 and y minus 3. And that's your complete factors for that problem. This next part is entirely new, and we're going to talk about factoring the sum of two cubes and the difference of two cubes. So let's say you have x cubed plus 64. You recognize this as two cubes, that's x cubed, and 64 is 4 cubed, so it's the sum of two cubes. When you have this, what you're going to do is break it into those cubes, so x cubed plus 4 cubed, that's the first step. The second step is to follow this formula, a plus b times a squared minus ab plus b squared. And you're just going to plug in what you have for a and b. And in this situation, this is a and that's b. So let's go ahead and plug those in. And I'll teach you a trick for memorizing this formula later. But let's go ahead and plug those in first. So a is x, b is 4. So a squared is x squared minus ab, that's 4x, plus b squared, that's 4 squared, so 16. And that's going to be your answer. X plus 4 times x squared minus 4x plus 16. Let's look at one that's the difference of cubes, like w to the third power minus 27. You recognize those as two cubes, so you're going to write it out as such. That's w cubed minus 3 cubed. And this one follows the formula a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. And we'll just go ahead and plug those in. A is w minus b, that's 3. Let me go ahead and rewrite that for you. Times w squared plus 3w, that's a times b. It does not include this sign in the middle. It's just whatever a is times whatever b is, not including the sign in the middle, that's why it's positive, plus 9. And that's going to be your answer for that one. So how can you remember those two formulas for the sum of cubes and the difference of cubes? For the sum, you get a plus b to remind you that it's the sum. Then it's a squared minus ab, this one's opposite, plus b squared. So all you need to remember is it's that this one is opposite. Whatever you get, there's a minus sign out front. The beginning part is just the sum to remind you it's the sum of cubes. Okay, how can you remember the difference of cubes one? Well, it starts out the same. It's a minus b to remind you that it's the difference of cubes. And this one's opposite, so a squared plus ab plus b squared. That's the difference of cubes. So everything's the same between those two, except that one part in the middle, right here. For the sum, it's opposite. For the sum, it's negative, and for the difference, it's positive. But everything else is going to be exactly the same. The front just reminds you, like this term reminds you what you started with, the sum. This one reminds you it's the difference. The next thing you need to know about is how to factor by grouping for x cubed polynomials. So let's say you have this polynomial, minus 3x squared minus 16x plus 48. Now the first thing you do is look, and if you can take something out, you do that. Here you cannot take anything out, so you're just going to have to factor by grouping. And what you do is you draw a line through here between the first two terms and the second two terms, and you factor what you can out of those areas. So you take x squared out times x minus 3 is left. Then you take a negative 16 out, 16, and what you're left is with x minus 3. And I just brought that sign down there. So negative 16 times x is negative 16x. Negative 16 times negative 3 is positive 48. Then what you're going to do is combine these. You're going to combine these two parts to get one thing in parentheses. And we'll combine the other two. Or we'll just take one of them. You only need to use one of them. Now we would be finished, but this is the difference of squares. So you get x plus 4 times x minus 4 times x minus 3. And that's your finished answer. The last thing from this section is when you factor a polynomial that looks like this, 2p to the 8 plus 10p to the 5th plus 12p squared, you of course are going to take out what you can. So you're going to take out a 2p squared, and you're going to get left with p to the 6th plus 5p to the 3rd plus 6. Now when you look at this, it looks like you can't do anything more about it, but you'll see that this number is a 6, this one's half of 6, and this one's nothing. So when this happens, when the first one's a number, the second one's half of that number, and the last one doesn't have it, you can factor this just via the oldest method possible. Split it up into two equations. How are you going to get p to the 6? Well, it's p third times p to the 3rd. Then we just need, how do we get a positive 6, and also get a positive 5? So we get plus 3 and plus 2. So it looks like a much different problem, and it's a little bit different, but this is actually in quadratic form, even though it doesn't look like it.